Hope you like this. If you do, give it a thumbs up and leave any comments below. And remember to subscribe to the channel to be kept up to date on all my hypnotic bedtime stories. So I hope you enjoy the story. So as you listen to me and begin to comfortably fall asleep, I don't know whether you'll drift off asleep faster to the sounds of my words or to the sound of my voice, or whether you'll drift off to sleep faster to the spaces between my words. And as you comfortably begin to fall asleep, you can allow your eyes to close as you listen to me talking in the background. And while I talk in the background as you fall asleep, I'm going to tell a story about a person out on a horse one day. And this person enjoyed going out horse riding. They lived near some vast open countryside with sprawling meadows, a few rolling hills, and some woodland. And they enjoyed going out regularly, exploring this countryside. And one day they were out exploring the countryside, sitting on the back of the horse as it rode out of their farmland and started riding off into that countryside. And they could feel the horse between their legs, the warmth of the horse's neck at their hands, the feeling of the movement as the horse walked, and the sound of the horse's hooves on the floor. And they could feel the air on their skin and notice what the sky looked like while the afternoon sun travelled across the sky, noticing the way the breeze affected the grass and wild plants, seeing birds flying in the sky, and just enjoying a comfortable ride out into the countryside. And after a few hours of riding, they stopped for a while, gave the horse something to drink, and the horse started eating some grass. They could hear that sound of the horse taking mouthfuls of grass, while they stopped and had something to eat and drink as well. And they thought about how calm and how pleasant these riding experiences are. Just that opportunity to get away from everything for a while. And while they sat there, letting their horse rest and eat, they rested and let their mind wander, just drifting to pleasant thoughts, pleasant ideas. And after a while they continued their journey on that horse. They were heading to a lake, which is down near the woodland. And they continued on that horse all the way down towards the lake. And as they approached the lake, They noticed how the air temperature changed slightly. The breeze was a little cooler as the air blew across the surface of the water before reaching their face. They noticed how the sun was beginning to set. And they decided now, as the sun's beginning to set, would be a good time to put up a tent. Start a fire, cook some food, and settle down for the night. So they put up a tent on the edge of the lake. They created a small fire just in front of the tent. They tied the horse to a nearby tree, giving plenty of rope for the horse to roam around, to lie down, to walk over to the lake, have a drink. And they gave some extra food to the horse. They felt the horse was almost like family. And they made themselves some food on the fire, had themselves a drink. And just sat in the entrance of the tent, just being, not doing anything particular, but just being. They sat in that entrance of that tent, hearing the crackling fire as it started dying down to embers, feeling the warmth given off by that fire as it died down to embers, seeing the way the moonlight danced on the surface of the lake, and the stars they could see in the sky. And as they gazed up at those stars, noticing the way they were twinkling, noticing the occasional shooting star that they almost heard whiz past, they just found the experience so calming, so relaxing. This opportunity to have some peace, some quiet, some time to separate from the hustle and bustle of daily life, of jobs they've got to do, of different tasks, different responsibilities, to be able to just focus on being in the here and now, being in this moment, just enjoying being here. And they could hear the lake very gently lapping on the shore. They continued to feel that breeze mixed with the warmth of the fire, and hear the sound of their horse lying down not far away. And then after a while, they began to feel tired. They began to want to drift comfortably asleep. So they lay back in their tent. They did the tent up and began to drift comfortably asleep. And while they were drifting comfortably asleep, they could hear the breeze on the outside of the tent, hear the sounds of nature outside the tent, while relaxing and drifting and falling asleep for the night. And then in the morning they were awoken by the sounds of birds, by the glow of sunlight, making the tent seem to glow on the inside, with just light coming from all directions. And as they started reorienting to the sounds, to the sights, they began to notice the movement of the side of the tent with the breeze. They opened the entrance to the tent and breathed in that fresh morning air. There was still just the slightest warmth from the fire, from the embers that had burned down. And their horse was already up, eating some grass, appearing very chilled. And they came here because they'd heard that there was a book on the island in the centre of this lake. And they wanted to go and try and find it, because they'd heard this book taught some secret knowledge and wisdom, and that got them curious. And they'd heard legends like this about this area before, but they'd never thought that the actual location was somewhere so close that they could check out for themselves and see if it's real. Or at least check it out and discover it's just a legend. So they got themselves a raft that inflated, that had been carried on the horse's back. They placed it down on the edge of the river, on the edge of the lake. And they inflated that raft. And they left their tent all set up. They saw no need to take the tent down. And they got in the raft, pushed away from the shore, and started rowing across the lake towards the island in the centre. And there was a few trees on that island, some bushes on that island, occasionally birds' nests on that island. And birds would often congregate on the island because it was away from the edge of the lake, where any foxes or other predators could perhaps get them. And they rowed out into the lake. You could hear the sound of their oar as they pushed the water behind them, and could feel that weight of the water being pushed, and feel the way that the raft gets pushed forwards with each push of the oar. They noticed how the air smelt so fresh just above the water as they continued rowing in the morning sun. And after about 20 minutes of rowing, they arrived at the island. Rowed the boat a little bit up onto the island and climbed off. and then pulled that raft out of the water because they didn't want to have to swim back to the other side. And then started exploring this small island, looking for any clue as to whether there is actually a book hidden here. And they explored around the outside of the island first, and then started walking slightly inward, and explored in a circle again, and then walked slightly inward again, and explored in a circle again. And then they noticed a carving in a tree of an arrow. And so they followed the direction that arrow was pointing. And they didn't know how far they should follow it, what clue they would see, or whether the arrow is even related to what they're searching for. But it was a starting place, and if they didn't find anything, they can always walk back to that tree and continue circling around the way they had been. And as they walked, with their senses open, gazing around, looking for anything that could be a clue, they tripped over something on the ground, and then found that it was a small little stone that had been carved, but had now grown over with grasses and mosses and vines, and so pretty much blended in with the surroundings. And that was pointing in a different direction. So they started walking in that direction. They thought 2 clues means they must be onto something, even if they don't know what. And that they definitely must be clues, because the first pointed in one direction and the second was on that route. And as they walked, they arrived at a tree that seemed to be directly in their way. And they thought about walking around the tree and carrying on walking until they find a clue. But they wondered, what if the tree is the clue? Why would you bury something or have something somewhere where the direction you have to point guides you straight into a tree? Wouldn't you just have it point slightly off from that and pass straight past the tree? So they took some time to start to analyze that tree, to look at that tree and see what they can learn from it. And the size of the tree matched up with the idea that whatever it was buried a few hundred years ago. Because this tree looked like it had probably been there that kind of length of time. And so they looked around the base of the tree, trying to find any clue. And then they broadened out a little bit from the base and circled around again, looking closely at the ground, trying to find any clue. And then they got down on their hands and knees and started stroking the hand just above the ground, trying to see if there's any clue. And with their hand they noticed a very slight lump on the ground, a little bit away from the tree. And there wasn't any other lumps on the ground. The rest of the ground was just normal, grass and mud, and yet this lump seemed a bit more solid, and it could just have been a piece of root, but they decided to uncover it and take a look. And they found that it was a little metal handle, like a handle to a trapdoor, and that there was an entire small trapdoor buried just ever so slightly under the mud, with just the handle poking out. They tried to pull the trapdoor open, but it didn't pull open easily, because of all the roots of the grass and other plants over the top of it. So using a penknife, they carefully cut at the roots just around the outside of the trapdoor, and then lifted that trapdoor open and saw some narrow steps heading down diagonally to underneath the tree. And they thought, this definitely is a clue. There's definitely some reason for all this. And they squeezed down those narrow stairs, going deeper and deeper under the tree. They used a torch to see, and they noticed that it opened up into a cavern that appeared to be supported by some kind of stone structure, and the tree obviously was growing above that. And the structure was arched in all directions. And in the centre was a pedestal with an old ornate book sitting on that pedestal. And they walked over to that book. They thought about whether they should take this book with them or leave this book here. And they decided, if it's been here for this long, it's best really to keep it here rather than take it. But they did think that maybe someone else in the future would come here and would actually take it. And so they opened the book. And started reading. And what they read was that this book was placed on the site of a spring that filled the lake, and the whole island was built on top of that spring. And the water seeps up through the island and starts filling the lake around the edges of the island. And they continued reading, and they learned that this spring was a fountain of youth. And that the water in the lake leads to youthfulness, to healing, to well-being. And that the newer and fresher the water is at the point of the spring, the more effective that healing property is. And they read that this had led to some problems, that people were fighting over the spring, that they were fighting over wanting this water, over wanting power and wanting to live forever and be fit and healthy forever. And that as the water over time loses its effectiveness, it was decided to build an island over the top of the spring, so that by the time the water has filtered through and spread out into the lake, quite a bit of time has gone by. And by the time anyone drinks the water at the edge of the lake, they'll get some healing benefit. But they're unlikely to live forever because of drinking that water. And so the potency is significantly reduced. And they had to stop it being possible for people to drink from the spring. And then as time went on, initially people were kept away from the area, and there were legends and rumours about this spring, this fountain of youth. But as future generations couldn't see that there was any evidence of this, they just assumed it was legends. And the book was left here to tell the story. By the last survivors from the Fountain of Youth, who had been drinking the water and who made the decision to stop drinking the water after they saw that it had drifted into legend. And the person felt that perhaps someone else might come and do the wrong thing by this message. But having this book in any other location would lead people to investigate and try and find this spring, would ruin the environment, would dig up the lake, until eventually they'd find the spring and someone would probably try and make money selling that spring water. And so they closed that book, kept it where they found it. They covered over the trapdoor after they left it. They knew it wouldn't take long for nature to reclaim the top and clean everything up. They added a bit more dirt this time to hide the handle. They removed the waypoint, the stone marker, so it wasn't pointing there anymore. And they left the arrow on the tree. And they went back and they rode back over the lake. and the sun was beginning to set. So before they journeyed home, they decided to camp one more night. They checked on their horse, had a little talk with their horse, gave the horse some food and rode the horse around a little bit. And then settled down for the night in the tent, drifting comfortably and relaxed asleep before heading home in the morning.